Hello, this is Kelly, first of her name, smasher of the patriarchy, mother of sons, knitter of hats, caster of pods. You're listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Tonight's episode is a little bit of a change from our normal. We're doing a fun look at the politics of Game of Thrones. Word of warning, this podcast is dark and full of spoilers. Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I'm on with my co-host Sophie. Hey Sophie.
Hey Kelly.
And we have some special guests with us tonight because we are going to do a little bit of a fun episode. So joining us tonight are Jennifer and Jeff from the Pod of Thrones and Kid Free Weekend. And you guys have a new podcast you're starting too. So hi Jennifer and Jeff.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So we are going to be talking tonight about the politics of Game of Thrones. So a little bit of a fun episode for us. Usually we're a little bit more serious about, politics, but this is going to be a lot of fun. We're big Game of Thrones fans, and with the new final season coming up, we thought this would be just a fun thing to talk about. Two things to note at the beginning. There will be spoilers. If you have not watched all the way through season 7 and you don't want to be spoiled, then turn this off right now.
And also start watching.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna watch.
Less than a week. Right?
Oh my gosh, how exciting.
Take the rest of the week off of work and just watch it nonstop.
Oh, yeah.
And also, we're not going to be, this isn't an exhaustive look at the politics of Game of Thrones. It's one episode. There's a whole lot of people who've written a whole lot of stuff about the politics of Game of Thrones, and I'll put some links up on our website. So if you're super interested in reading up more, you can definitely go do so. So let's get into the discussion. I think what I would kind of like to start with talking about is just kind of what do we think the political structure, or actually multiple structures, look like? So just sort of a general overview of, what does this kind of look like? And I guess the question to go with that is, are they consistent? Is the political structure that's set up, does it stay the same throughout? Are there things that you think actually don't make any sense at all when it gets down to it? This is just a sort of free flow discussion. So anyone who wants to jump in and talk about, or, don't answer my question at all and just start talking.
Game of Thrones seems to be a pretty consistent monarchy, but what about outside of Westeros? I'm not really sure how we would classify those regimes. Are they more of like despotisms? Are they? I guess they're maybe a little more totalitarian in the way they oppress their citizens. Right? They have very strict castes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Westeros is not as bad. I'd rather live in Westeros, I think.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're not royal, you're living in the rat. What was called the rat
flea bottom.
The rat bottom. You have to either be part of the horrible monarchy there or live in flea bottom.
There is the Iron Islands, though, and they seem to have, that's not like a fun place to live either, but they do seem to have like some sort of proto-democracy going on. They don't just pick as their ruler the person who was related to the last ruler. They have what's called the King's Moot, where representatives of all of the big families come together and they choose the person who's going to lead them, which doesn't end up well in the course of Game of Thrones. The ruler that they end up choosing in the end is not great, but they sort of have more of a democratic structure than the rest of Westeros.
That's true, but they're still part of the Seven Kingdoms. Now that you're talking about that, it is a very strange structure. It's not like it's not the Lord of the Iron Islands. He declares himself the king of the Iron Islands, and we have Prince Doran and Dorne. I mean, there are these other structures that still are technically under the Iron Throne, but they have their own royalty, I guess, to them in a roundabout kind of way. That's interesting. And the proto-democracy, well, we know how democracy goes. Sometimes the crazy person wins out. You've seen good at right. Up a crowd, right?
Yeah. He's going to start saying, burn them all soon.
Kind of has, actually.
Yeah.
He burned a lot of his own people in season 7.
So, I mean, the thing I think that's interesting to tease out then is if Westeros, is this mostly monarch-driven society, and it's very patriarchal, but, we get to the end of season 7 and it's like the women are all in charge. And it doesn't seem to be, it seems to be maybe falling apart. Like maybe that is sort of the story, one of the stories of Game of Thrones is this system that they have built up has come to sort of a breaking point. Am I making that up? Does that make some sort of sense?
No.
Well, I'm wondering how much of that is in the book. Is it the same? Because I didn't read.
Well, we're way past the books.
Okay, good. So here's my thought. I don't know. I was going to say, would they have made it such, turn the tides completely and have all women in power if we weren't in this political environment that we are right now? Mm. Would the story be the same?
In terms of the writing and how that reflects our current...
Right.
Well, I don't know. That's it. Well, because Daenerys, if you go to the books, Daenerys was still up and coming and has taken over Meereen and was dealing with the insurgency, which itself has so many seeming parallels, even though it was written years ago. But she was the woman in power. Now, where the books left off was Cersei in power.
Oh, yeah?
I don't think so.
Oh, I thought you said...
So, Sophie, are you a book expert?
I'm not a book expert, but I have read them all. We're not there yet with the books, I don't think, in terms of Cersei.
Because I think she had done her walk of shame in the books, but I think that was the last part. So Tommen is still around. So she's not in power yet. So as the books have diverged, I think they've had guidance from George, but we definitely don't have Sansa running the north, and we don't have Cersei running the south, but we do have Daenerys as Misa, the freer of people, right? Mm-hmm. Breaker of chains.
Mother of dragons.
So many other titles.
Well, and so that makes Daenerys interesting. So there's one of the pieces I'm going to link to on our website is this article from Vox, which is this crazy long, as Vox does, but it talks about all of the characters and their strategies based on political science. So everybody's arcs from season 7. And it talks about Daenerys as being fairly progressive, right? She wants to sort of break the wheel of power and she wants to free slaves. But, she's like marching into places and forcibly freeing slaves, right? I mean, and, there's a certain, I'm not sure the world powers in our world would go along with that. And, really she's got some problems in season 7. So it's not like everyone is just sort of going along with her either. But, she is kind of progressive, except she wants to go and seize the Iron Throne too. So
progressive in an old school kind of way.
Her dream is to be the benevolent dictator, right? She wants everyone to swear fealty to her.
Right.
Everyone swears fealty to her.
She'll take care of them
after she rains down fire and death on them. Because that's her instinct, right? Like everyone's advising her not to rain fire and death down, but that's her gut says dragons kill things, me take charge. But then after that, she wants everybody to be prosperous and share the wealth and have food and be happy and no more slavery, right? Like equal rights for women, like all the things that you would want to see happen to Westeros. But first, everyone has to agree that she's ruler for life. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag.
So if you could have Hillary Clinton as president, but she had to be dictator for life, would you go along with it?
Well, I don't think I want to say yes to that because it sounds like a trap.
But we'd get rid of Trump.
Given some of the discussions that people have had about Trump recently, and if I don't want a dictator, but if I was going to have one, I want it to be Donald J. Trump. It's just a scary road to go down. But since this has been for thousands and thousands of years, this monarchy, sometimes brutal, sometimes prosperous, she's still progressive. She's progressing. She wants to make things better, but she's not changing everything in the system. She's just changing a bunch, or will change a bunch. Just not everything. Still progress.
She's like, what, 20 now?
Well, I mean, in the book, she might still be like 18, 19. I don't even know.
Yeah, in the book, she's 13 at the beginning, I think, right?
Right.
Years pass for sure, but she's still pretty darn young.
That's why she wants to burn things, because she doesn't have a control of that yet.
And sleep with her nephew.
Who among us has not wanted to just burn it all down recently, right?
There's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened.
There isn't riots in the streets yet?
Yeah.
We're not advocating that people go burn things.
No. No.
It's not what we want. It's just...
You should topple power structures, but not literally topple things.
Right. Well, Daenerys literally wants to break the wheel.
Yes.
Right. She has no qualms, as we've seen in season 7 when it came to like House Tarly. Right. She has no qualms about just taking down the people that are currently in power if they're going to be dicks.
Mm-hmm.
That's breaking the wheel in a big way. We're not doing that here in America.
Right. Not yet.
Thankfully.
But that's what I mean. It's going to take the people. That's how we ever get any change in our government, is if the people rise up and say, that's enough. We're done with you.
We started going down that road in 2018, right? We just have to finish the job in 2020. It's very exciting.
So in an interview with George R.R. Martin, I can't not call him Gurr. He says that the parallel he sees in modern times is he thinks that Trump is Joffrey. Do we think Trump is Joffrey?
No, Trump is Euron.
Yes.
100%. Like, if you watch the Kingsmoot, that whole thing was literally like... that was what the 2016 election was. Like, you had this very competent woman who's the clear choice, who's like, hello, I will be your leader and do all of these like really sensible things. And then this random dude who is just like openly, yeah, sure, I killed the previous king, comes in and is like, let's make the Iron Islands great again. And let's, and then everybody's like, oh yeah, well, he's a dude, we should listen to him. And then they make him king, and he's just like this vainglorious, insane person. Euron is 1,000% Donald Trump.
I think he has Euron's
bravado,
yes, but Joffrey's temper
and Joffrey's cowardice. Ultimately,
sure.
Trump will say things like, "I would totally." I can't. I would totally run into that school and I had a gun and I would have taken out the shooters. How can you not know that that's bullshit? The man has probably the softest hands in America. He has never done a day of anything in his life that was physical except golf, which apparently he sucks at. So there's no way he's going to charge into anywhere with a gun. And that's like Joffrey, because Joffrey will gladly stab someone if they're helpless in any fashion. But if it comes down to it, he was a spineless coward every time.
Yeah, he ran away.
So I think it's a mix. Because I do think the Euron comparison it's almost like they're writing based on politics, even though I know a lot of this stuff was already in the books, but it is kind of crazy. I think it's just the cycle of history, right? Like George is pulling stuff from old European history, whether it's the Wall and the Wildlings or, the way some of these houses are interacting with each other, but it's all coming around again. That's another wheel that we need to break. But yeah, you're on. I guess I would make Yara Hillary, huh? If Hillary is secretly that badass, I would love to know.
Yeah, me too.
You would vote for her.
Is she also secretly a lesbian?
She was at that, and not well, bi, I think. But yeah, at that point, Hillary can be our dictator. Right?
Question: so, if Joffrey is Trump, if Trump had a sword, what would he name it? Like how Joffrey names his sword Widow's Wail, which is like the worst.
Well, I'm going to take the easy way out here, but I think it's probably true. He would call it Trump sword.
I think that is a good answer.
He'd call it Bigley. Well, so here is what George R.R. Martin says about. He says, Trump reminded me most of Joffrey. They have the same level of emotional maturity, and Joffrey likes to remind everyone that he's king and thinks that gives him the ability to do anything. So Maureen Dowd had asked him that question, and then Maureen Dowd asked him, I wonder how Game of Thrones provides insights into the mindsets and strategies of modern-day geopolitics. And Martin says, I'll pass on that one.
Well, it should provide insights. I've always thought you can learn a lot from movies and TV shows. I mean, I think it shaped a lot of my morality growing up because I didn't do much except sit in front of the TV. I think there's great lessons to be learned. I mean, the wildlings are the perfect analog. It's Trump's platform, right? I mean, all he wants to talk about is how bad the brown people are. And the wildlings are them. And it turns out they're humans and they want to live and they want to make babies and they want to get through this shit. And they're fleeing violence and they're looking for amnesty south of the wall. I can't watch the wildlings go through what they've been through and think, yeah, well, that's just TV. Sure, those guys are just humans that we should probably wind up rooting for. But in the real world, it's an invasion and we're all in trouble. I can't do it. I don't know why more people aren't getting that, because I think Game of Thrones crosses a lot of political boundaries in terms of its fandom.
In case anyone has stumbled upon this podcast just because they were looking for Game of Thrones and you're a Republican, you probably just want to turn it off. You may have realized at this point that this is not the podcast for you.
They might want to get a little bit of reality.
Or keep listening and listen to all of our episodes and realize how important progressive politics is. So speaking of progressive politics, the other sort of major overarching theme that people have talked about and that George R.R. Martin has said, yes, that makes a lot of sense, is that this is all an allegory about climate change. And that, everyone else is sort of stuck fighting the battles amongst themselves. And Jon Snow is like, somebody in one of these articles calls him the Al Gore of Westeros. That he's running around going, no, we have to think about climate change. We have to think about this big threat that is looming.
Winter is coming. And
unless we all band together, pool our forces, we're not going to be able to defeat this huge thing that's coming. I mean, are there lessons to be learned from that? Do we agree with that?
I've never heard that one before. It's interesting. I'm thinking about it right now. This isn't George that said this. This is other people.
He hasn't said that, that's why he wrote it. I mean, he started these books a million years ago, right? Like, nobody was talking about climate change. But he has said that, he does think there are parallels there and that, it makes sense and it's a good way to think about it. So I don't think that's why he wrote it that way, at least not at the beginning. But he likes the idea.
Would that make the Night King pollution?
Yes.
The physical manifestation?
Or Trump.
Or Trump? Well, no. Well, Trump is Joffrey, which would mean that mean Melania's in charge? No, I don't know.
God help us all. Ivanka's in charge.
Well, it's interesting, though. I mean, even as we close out season 7, everyone's trying to decide if they're going to focus on fighting each other or finally come together and battle Winter. I assume if they kill the Night King, Winter goes away, right? Or will go away soon. But if they don't kill the Night King, probably Winter forever.
Probably.
Is that a safe assumption?
Mm-hmm.
You guys think?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as opposed to our situation where it will be summer forever.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of the opposite. Oklahoma is north and ours is south, so everything's opposite in Westeros.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, there's a common theme. This isn't sci-fi, of course, this is fantasy. I think it's just a big political story that happens to have some dragons and magic in it. But there's a lot of people in sci-fi who have focused on this idea that, everyone sort of has to come together to face larger challenges. I mean, that's basically what Star Trek is all about, right? Like, humanity can't go and explore other planets until it comes together. All of Earth, comes together into sort of one political structure. So, I think that it's a common refrain in these sorts of allegorical stories. And I think it makes sense, whether or not it's climate change, that there's something that we could take away from this, that instead of fighting amongst ourselves, Democrats versus Republicans and countries versus each other, like, there are bigger things that we could tackle. Now, whether Game of Thrones will defeat the Night King or not, I don't know.
We have the Paris Climate Accords.
Uh-huh. How are those
That
going?
was something. Well, I mean, I'm not sure how they're going. I mean, Joffrey got into foreign power.
Joffrey.
If Trump is Joffrey, does that mean someone has to assassinate him? Again, I'm not advocating that.
That's obviously not going to happen, of course.
I mean, they just fired the head of the Secret Service, so I'm not sure who's going to prevent it. But
Yeah, but he's already married, so...
So no purple wedding.
Yeah, weddings seem to be the best way to get rid of people in Westeros, so...
Well, who's the guy that just got fired from the Secret Service? I can't remember his name. Al, some of that. So he would be Jaime Lannister.
What?
Jaime was head of Kingsguard, right? And then he just kind of got kicked around. Or would it be Meryn Trant? I don't know. That guy's Who's Arya Stark in this situation, you guys?
We need an Arya. You're right.
She's my favorite. Could Arya be one of our 2020 contenders?
If we had an Arya, she'd be a good 2020 contender. Too bad Maisie Williams isn't American. She may not be old enough either.
No.
That's true. That's true.
Maisie, come to America. We need you.
Yeah, we don't have an Arya yet.
No, probably not. But we do have some kick-ass women running in 2020. So here's hoping. I think any of them would intimidate the hell out of our little Joffrey Trump. Because he doesn't know what to do with women that are powerful. He can't handle it.
That's true.
Just like Tommen.
Aww.
Tommen was so nice.
He was so gullible.
Is that Eric Trump? No, he's evil too. Maybe Baron. Could be Baron Trump.
Oh, Baron.
God.
We don't know anything about Baron Trump, but Baron, Tommen, very similar sound.
All right. So let's wrap this up with a question of, who do you think is going to win? This isn't really politics anymore, but, you can't have a Game of Thrones.
Or Game of Thrones?
Either, both. Drawn together in a nice parallel if you can. No, I meant Game of Thrones, but I'd love to hear your 2020 predictions too.
All right, babe, you want to start?
I don't know anymore. I'm like, it's either going to be like Sansa and Gendry or together.
Wait, are you predicting a
No.
coupling?
Arya's going to marry Gendry.
They could be.
Well, Arya and Gendry could have married years ago, but she's changed a lot. I'd love to see them get together, but she's changed a lot.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't want to be with a murderess.
Well, does she have romance in her heart anymore?
No.
What do you guys think?
Ever? Did she ever?
Arya?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a little bit. She was still young, but she kind of took a shine to Gendry, to use an old 50s term. So Sansa and Gendry. I still think, I've said this on our show, Pod of Thrones, a couple of times, but I think Arya is going to be on the Iron Throne at some point. But she'll be wearing someone else's face. She could be wearing Baelish or Cersei's faces, or both, varying points. I think she'll be on the Iron Throne to sort of throw things for a loop. If she was wearing Cersei's face, that would be a great way to get King's Landing and the Lannister forces to start doing the right thing.
Well, and she hates Cersei, so I could see
That
it.
would be right. That's a good plan, but Starks don't make good plans.
They are famous for it. But they admitted in the end of season 7 that they've made a lot of stupid decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe now is the chance to turn that around.
I hope so, but I doubt it.
Well, who do you guys think is going to be on the Iron Throne?
Well, I know who Sophie wants.
So I am Team Cersei, party of one. I love Cersei, and I wish that she would win, but I don't think she will. So I'm kind of boring. I think that because I know that Game of Thrones is based on the War of the Roses, the English Civil War of the Roses, I think it's going to end up being Daenerys and Jon Snow. I think Daenerys is supposed to be the Henry Tudor of this world, and so she's going to marry the Elizabeth of York, which is Jon Snow, and they're going to have a child, and that's going to be Henry VIII.
It's true. He did base this on a lot of the history, but it just seems like it's too easy of an answer. That's
It does.
That's the only reason I don't go for it, is that Daenerys and Jon together is too obvious.
But wouldn't that make it a surprise? Because nobody would expect it, because it's the easy thing.
Reverse psychology.
Well, then, just so I can have a different answer that no one has had yet, I'm going to go with Tyrion.
Ooh, yay. That would be awesome.
He'd be great. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm not sure if he would want it. Would he take it willingly, or would he take it reluctantly because everyone else died?
I mean, he would take it more willingly than Jon Snow would.
Yeah, but Jon Snow's going to change. He's tasted that sweet, sweet auntie. and that's gonna totally alter his worldview in season 7.
How so?
How so?
Yeah.
He's in love now.
Yeah, but they spent one night. They can break it off.
I don't know. They look pretty good together.
He didn't want to be king in the north either, but he did that. So, he's pretty good at like sucking it up and taking power reluctantly.
That's true. And you could certainly argue destiny with the whole resurrection thing. Spoilers. Not that sleeping with his aunt wasn't a spoiler.
Well, so in defense of Tyrion, I just watched the Battle of Blackwater episode, and he has this like rousing speech, and he realizes like, oh wait, I can lead people. So I can see him doing it.
Oh, I think he would be great as a monarch, especially now that he seems to be a little more sober. Some of the time. Yeah, I think he'd be fantastic as a ruler. But again, maybe it's too obvious, but he has such a tragic aura about him. I just don't have great feelings about his fate.
Right.
You know who we're totally overlooking? Sam and Gilly.
Story of Sam and Gilly.
Sam has to win, or has to come out of this alive, because he has to write the Song of Ice and Fire. We all know that. So
maybe he writes it as, he and Gilly are the last people left on.
Is he sitting on the Iron Throne?
Yeah. Well, he's of noble birth, so
yeah.
I guess anything's possible. It would be so cool. But he's like the comic relief, so my gut says probably not. But we do love Sam and Gilly.
Well, this is Weiss and Benioff writing it, or sort of directing it. I think if George R.R. Martin was writing it, maybe Sam would be the ultimate winner, because that's him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But his job is probably just to document the winners. That's probably the most likely scenario.
All right. So I think we've covered all of the politics of Game of Thrones in one neat, slightly over half-hour episode.
We're very good.
If you would like to know much, much more about politics, you can keep listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, or the brand new podcast that you guys are working on. So tell us about it.
It's not exactly a brand new podcast in and of itself, at least not at this point. But we have 2 shows.
The Kid Free Weekend.
The Kid Free Weekend is just, it started as just, we have these weekends where our kids are gone. We're 2 single parents that found each other, and our kids aren't around on every other weekend. So that's just us talking about whatever we want to talk about. But we have gotten into politics once in a while, and now we decided to start making that a focus for now, because got to do something. Anything we can do to help, let's do it. So we're digging into the resistance movement. We've been finding all these cool people on Twitter, and we're starting to talk to them. So we had our first one of these conversations, not such an interview, just a wonderful conversation with someone the other week. And we've got more in the pipeline coming soon.
All right. Excellent. And anybody who needs a little bit of a refresher on Game of Thrones before the new season, very short season, comes out on Sunday, you guys have some seasonal recap episodes too.
Yes, we do. We just finished recording all of season 7 in 30 minutes. So you can find recaps for season 7 there. And then in the past, we actually did a couple different, you explain our different things that we've done.
Well, we have the 30-minute recaps, which aren't actually 30 minutes because we do little intros and outros. But the recaps themselves of each season, 1 through 7, in 30 minutes apiece. So you can find those in our podcast feed. You can also find them on YouTube. But then, we've been recapping whole seasons. Seasons 1 through 5 is when we started the podcast. And then we did episode by episode recaps for 5, 6, 7, and now 8. We try to get them out that night. Like when you wake up Monday morning, you will have our instant reaction to watch the show. And the credits roll and we hit pause and we hit record on our microphones and we just go to it.
All right, so everyone can check those out as well. Sophie and I will not be recapping every Game of Thrones episode on podcast form, but if you know us in real life, I'm sure we will be.
In our heads, yeah.
And if you watch our Twitter or Facebook, you may see some of that in there as well, because we won't be able to not do it. All right, well, thank you very much, Jennifer and Jeff, for joining us. This was a lot of fun, and I hope we'll stay in touch about your new ventures, and we'll have to talk some more about politics of Game of Thrones. Maybe we'll do another episode at the end of season 8 and see what did we learn? Who was right?
Yeah, our predictions. We can go back over those again because we're on record here now on your show.
I mean, I said like 4 different people, but I think that one of the main characters will end up winning.
If you need to gush between now and then, you're always welcome to come on Pot of Thrones too, because we'll be doing recaps and we'll also try to have midweek episodes to just take a deep breath and talk about what happened as well.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.